Coming up on Network Africa. 3 Nigerians deported from the United States for various crimes, as at least 3,000 more deportees expected to return home. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa called Afrikaners relocating to the U.S. cowards. Plus, Mali's military ruler dissolves all political parties in the country. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olande. 3 Nigerians have been deported from the United States of America, having been charged with various crimes in the country. Sources connected to the matter say their deportation is in connection with a decision by the U.S. government to deport at least 3,000 Nigerians who have been involved in various crimes in the U.S. The deportees arrived this morning on a Delta Airlines flight at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport, Lagos, just before 9 a.m. They were received by officials of different Nigerian government agencies who will decide what happens to them from here on. The U.S. government, under the Trump administration, intends to have more deportations in line with its policy of streamlining migration in the country. In the meantime, the federal government of Nigeria is advocating stronger global partnerships to harness youth, innovation and education in shaping the future of migration. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction, Professor Nentawe Yewata, made the call at the Euro-Afro dialogue on migration in Abuja, where he represented President Bola Tinubu. Professor Yewata said that migration is not a crisis but a driver of development and highlights initiatives by the federal government to prepare young people for global competitiveness. Our correspondent Benny Ark reports.
Nigeria welcomed over 100 delegates from partner countries across Africa and Europe to discuss migration issues, with a theme driving the future of migration, with special focus on youth, innovation and education. The meeting, known as the Rabat process, is co-chaired by Nigeria and Spain, with Nigeria being the first English-speaking West African country to lead the conversation.
Over the course of this meeting, we look forward to thought-provoking exchanges, practical ideas and collaborative strategies that can support youth engagement and drive innovation in migration governance.
The meeting reaffirmed a collective commitment to a humane, development-driven migration agenda.
Our two regions have been showing complementary demographic trends. IOM forecasts indicate that by 2050, Africa's working-age population is expected to increase by 450 million people. These figures highlight the extraordinary opportunity for interregional collaboration and co-development that we must make our best to unleash.
At a time when, in a number of countries and regions around the globe, including in Europe, migration is weaponized, used as an instrument of pressure, or migrants serve as scapegoats for crime or socio-economic shortcomings, and see some of their basic rights trampled, it is essential to reaffirm the principles and objectives that unite the members of the Rabat process.
The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction is representing President Bola Tinubu at the dialogue, and he called for shared investments and collaboration to address the challenges of migration.
As chair, Nigeria is committed to bringing fresh perspective to the table and to championing the migration narrative that is safe, is orderly, and also empowering. We are committed to steering the Rabat process towards a meaningful action, grounded in evidence, policy coherence, and also people-first strategy.
The participating countries have expressed readiness to work collectively to address the challenges of irregular migration, and over the next 3 days, they're expected to develop actionable plans to ensure safe migration that will be beneficial for all. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
Mali's military leader has dissolved all political parties in the country amid a growing crackdown on dissent since the army seized power. The decision was validated by military leader Assimi Goïta, who seized power after the coups in 2020 and 2021 and is due to stay in power for at least another 5 years despite pledges to hold elections. This move has sparked fresh resistance by political parties who have been demanding the country returns to democratic rule. Since last year, the military authorities have intensified a crackdown on political activities. Zambia's Foreign Minister Mlambo is warning diplomats in the country against interfering in his country's affairs, saying there is an increasing tendency by envoys to ignore diplomatic channels, and this could undermine the spirit of mutual respect. Although he did not name anyone, his comments come days after the U.S. ambassador to Lusaka, Michael Gonzalez, raised concerns about a systemic theft of drugs donated to the southern African country. Last week, Mr. Gonzalez called a press conference to announce that the U.S. was cutting $50 million of health aid to Zambia because of the theft of life-saving medications that the U.S. had provided for medical patients. In his response, Mr. Mlambo says addressing the government through the media amounted to interference and was in breach of diplomatic conventions. We're in South Africa now, where President Cyril Ramaphosa has voiced out his opinion on a group of 59 white South Africans who have moved to the U.S. to resettle as refugees. The president says they are cowards and they'll be back soon. According to him, those who wanted to leave were not happy with efforts to address the inequities of the apartheid past, terming their relocation a sad moment for them. The group of Afrikaners arrived in the U.S. on Monday after President Donald Trump granted them refugee status, alleging they faced racial discrimination and genocide. Earlier, Mr. Trump and his close ally, South Africa-born Elon Musk, had said there was a genocide of white farmers in South Africa, a claim that has been widely discredited and rejected by the South African government. Joining us now for more discussions on this is Dr. Malusi Mlambo. He's a political analyst and lecturer of South Africa-US Relations Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. Malusi, good to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers and to all the listeners.
Good afternoon to you as well. Well, what are your thoughts on the white South Africans relocating to the U.S. as refugees, particularly President Cyril Ramaphosa's recent comments calling them cowards?
Personally, my view is, let's look at the criteria of what genocide is. If you look at the United Nations Convention for Genocide, none of that meets the criteria of what a genocide is. It must be known that AfriForum, according to South Africa's constitution, it is a non-state civil society organization. Now, it is pretty surprising whereby now they have a relationship directly with the presidency of Donald Trump. This is the highest office in the land of the United States of America, and a civil society group going over and above the what called the South African government. Now, when you look at the South African human rights and you look at the United Nations human rights, none of them have said this is a genocide. It's not a genocide at all. But I would like to say this is sour grapes, and this is very dangerous what the United States is doing. Basically what they're doing, they are weaponizing the victimhood of white people who do not want to see land justice that has to be done, and that special injustices that were committed on black people, they must be rectified, and it must be equitable for everybody. And since America is declining and we're now totally in a multipolar world. They are using soft power in a very weaponized, dangerous place so that they still have their paws on South Africa's politics. And this is where we're at. And South Africa has to be very, very careful. America is being ruthless. They've always been ruthless. And Africa must also be careful, and BRICS must be careful.
So how would you assess, the implications of this in relation to the global perception of South Africa, knowing the country's history?
Okay, now, number one, let's look at the history. Basically, recently, the things that have happened. South Africa has always announced from the time of Mandela that no country will choose friends for South Africa. Gaddafi was our friend. Fidel Castro was our friend. Then Ramaphosa has carried on the same tradition of non-alignment. We respect each country's sovereignty. And Ramaphosa, that's why, as a sovereign state, we went to Ukraine and we went to Russia to say we are about peace. Let there be a peaceful solution. Now, what the United States does not like is South Africa asserting its independence, being a BRICS member. And being a BRICS member, it does affect the influence of the United States of America. And that's why I keep on saying they want to interfere into the internal affairs of South Africa, and the African Forum becomes that ostensible type of Trojan horse that they can use to be able to destabilize South Africa. Remember, there was the story about the Lady Brand that South Africa was supplying arms to Russia during the Russia, Ukraine conflict. Number two, one time the United States announced that there might be a terrorist attack in South Africa without following protocol and informing South African intelligence. Number three, during the preparatory G20 preparations, right, they did not attend to show that they do not have confidence. So gloves are off in terms of that. South Africa has to be very careful. The United States of America doesn't care about South Africa as a sovereign state. Most of the companies that run the South African economy, they are Anglo-Saxon, they are British, and they are Americans. So as far as they are concerned, they do not want the infusion of BRICS into the South Africa's political landscape. And here South Africa has to tread very vigilantly. That's all I can say.
With all you've mentioned, Dr. Malusi, how do you perceive, future relations now between the U.S. and South Africa, between these two countries?
I didn't hear the last part, but I'll assume the relationship between South Africa and South Africa wants a good relationship. South Africa wants a good relationship with the United States. And South Africa respects the principle of a sovereign United States. But it takes two to tango. It means the United States must do that for anybody else. But if you look at what the United States is doing, it doesn't care about a good relationship with anybody else. Their politics has always been a politics of dominance, not multipolarity. So as much as South Africa will not move to the camp of the United States, South Africa is not going to be a good friend. South Africa is not going to be a good friend of the United States. Why am I saying that? You can just look at the tariffs that the United States has imposed on China. You can just look at the maneuverings around the South Coast China Sea, around China and around Taiwan. This is basically saber rattling. So if they can do it to a superpower like China, what is South Africa? So the relationship is not good, but the posturing of South Africa, I think it's excellent. They're being diplomatic, they're being vigilant, which is fine. But us as scholars, we must tell it as it is. I think the United States is being mischievous. The United States is being dictatorial. The United States is being imperialistic, and they cannot hide it anymore. And that doesn't just go for South Africa. It goes to the whole landscape of Africa, and Africa has to be very, very careful and vigilant.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malusi Mlambo, political analyst, joining us from South Africa. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to the program. Nigerians living abroad can now obtain their bank verification numbers online. The initiative, which is a collaboration between the Central Bank and the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System, is part of measures to improve financial inclusion, accelerate diaspora remittances, as well as improve investments in the country. The governor of the central bank, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, who was speaking during the launch, explains that the onboarding of more Nigerians to the non-resident bank verification number platform is expected to improve monthly remittances to about $1 billion monthly.
The governor of the central bank is leading top officials of the bank to this meeting, which is holding in collaboration with the Nigeria Interbank Settlement System and representatives of commercial banks. Tagged Unlocking the Non-Resident BVN Framework, the initiative targets Nigerians in the diaspora to help them achieve seamless financial transactions while contributing to the nation's economy.
By providing secure, remote access to financial services, this platform simplifies the process of maintaining robust banking relationships, facilitating meaningful investments in Nigeria, and supporting the seamless flow of remittances.
The key objective of the NRBVN, therefore, was to develop a centralized and scalable digital solution for BVN enrollment anywhere from the comfort of your sitting room.
Next, the Deputy Governor in charge of financial system stability moderates the plenary session.
How you plan to integrate economic and financial inclusion for the diasporans.
While heads of commercial banks speak to what to expect from the initiative, the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission speaks to some concerns of Nigerians living abroad.
We have an institution like us and any other bank that has the credibility and creates a platform and say, you know, you can give towards education, support indigent students in the north or in the east or west, or you can bring money for healthcare. You'll find that there are many Nigerians who don't have to listen to those adverts in London, so give $5 or $10 to faceless children. They can bring $5 or $10 to children in Nigeria whose name you can know.
This is something they're all excited about and looking forward to with proper implementation. They do have some concerns, like, for instance, data privacy protection, which I'm sure you will handle as we move on. They also have concerns about double taxation.
And then the Apex Bank governor gives his words and expectations on the initiative.
With the introduction of NRBVN and complementary policy measures, we are optimistic about achieving our ambitious targets. A goal we believe is entirely achievable given the growing trust and convenience in formal remittance channels.
The Apex Bank is hoping that the policy will increase diaspora remittances in the country, which stood at $4.7 billion last year. Sarah Chimugu.
An independent expert on the situation of human rights in Somalia, Aisha Daifan, is calling on the authorities in the country to step up their efforts on a range of human rights issues for the good of all citizens. Mrs. Daifan made this comment on her latest visit to the country, where she urged the government of Somalia to seize the opportunity to accelerate its work on the constitutional review and adoption processes, establishing legislative and institutional frameworks to guarantee the rights of all Somalis going forward. Her remarks come in as part of the preliminary observations ahead of her presentation of a full report to the UN Human Rights Council and General Assembly later this year.
The lower costs.
Powering progress, unlocking the industrialization.
As we consider the United Nations and the AU transition in Somalia, I call upon the government of Somalia to seize this opportunity to accelerate its work on the constitutional review and adoption process, establishing legislative and institutional frameworks to guarantee the rights of Somalis going forward. At the same time, strengthen its policy and institutions to properly deal with its fragile security, political and humanitarian realities. Moreover, addressing the negative impact of climate change and the current funding crisis on the population, in particular ensuring access to basic social services such as water supply, food, healthcare, delivery, and education for all children are essential. My mandate requires me to monitor and report on the situation of human rights in Somalia with a view to making recommendations on technical assistance and capacity building in the field of human rights. Thus, the aim of my visit was to assess the human rights situation, including on the implementation of my benchmarks and recommendations since the issuance of my last report in October 2024. I strongly condemn Al-Shabaab, which remains the major perpetrator of a range of human rights abuses against civilians, including children, and for keeping the country in a perpetual security crisis. I also remain concerned about the upsurge in conflict between Al-Shabaab and its associates and government forces supported by the Community Defense Forces and its international partners, as well as instances of military confrontation between the federal government and Jubaland state, resulting in alleged killings and displacement of civilians, including in Jubaland, Hashabele, Gulmudug, and the Banadir regions. I also learned that these fightings have led to an increase in human rights violations and humanitarian protection concerns, including sexual violence, child recruitment, and early marriage issues, among others. Moreover, the ongoing political clan and resource-related conflicts have further exacerbated the human rights and security problems in the country.
The African Union and All Africa Music Awards, AFRIMA, have convened in Addis Ababa at the AU headquarters 2 years after the last awards ceremony in Dakar, Senegal. Delegates from across the music world, including Stonebwoy from Ghana, Eddie Kenzo from Uganda, Nikita from Kenya, and others, joined the music conference conversation around using music and culture as a catalyst for change. Well, I'm now being joined by our correspondent, Abidemi Dairo, who is on ground at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa. Hello, Abidemi. Tell us what is going on at the AU headquarters where you are.
Hello and thank you. And the event today at the African Union headquarters is a box of activities, and it started with two music conferences here. Right here, we had panelists sitting right behind me here and having conversations around the way forward for music in Africa. And the conversation discussed revenue, funding, generation for funding strategies, monetization, and cross-border collaboration. And all of this is important because they've recognized that the power of music to shape global narrative and scale growth in Africa. Of course, this later cascaded into the impact of streaming and AI on music in Africa.
Now, what are some of the issues identified around these subjects?
Well, some of the issues that were identified today by the panelists, which of course consisted of some of the biggest names in music in Africa, people like Stonebwoy, Eddie Kenzo, Nikita. Some of the issues that were raised included adequate legal and managerial representation for emerging artists, standardization of copyright laws across Africa, and the creation of a transparent royalties system. And perhaps one of the most important is where are the African alternatives to some of the big tech infrastructures in music, infrastructures like Spotify, TikTok, and all of these big tech companies. Where is the African alternative? Most of these infrastructures are owned by non-Africans. So what is Africa? When is Africa going to be distributing music by Africans? So this conversation is there because a lot of the revenue generated by some of these global artists don't eventually trickle down to Africa. Most of it stay back in the climb where they are generated.
And is AFRIMA going to host an award ceremony this year?
Yes, finally, the 25th edition of the Afrimans is going to be hosted in Lagos, and it's going to be between the 25th of November to the 30th of November. Of course, there is going to be a call for nomination, and the portal is going to be active from the 20th of May. After which there's going to be an announcement for nominations, and then there's also going to be the Road to Afrima tour, which is going to be across various cities in Africa, and also this time around there's going to be activities in London in the UK, and there's going to be in Paris in France as well. So yes, Afrima 2025 is going to be in Lagos, and let's keep our fingers crossed and to host it again for the 7th time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Bidemi Dairo, our correspondent there in Addis Ababa. Well, that's where we end the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.